Recently, we discussed here on the channel Brahms' depiction of Lilith from Diablo 4. Today, I want to dive deeper in another artist, this time Igor Sid. He's a senior concept artist that worked on the full production of Diablo 4, and a lot of his decision making is great source of knowledge and information for us that are interested in art and want to improve our painting skills, our drawing skills. He has a great control of lighting, values, colors, design, anatomy, and the biggest of all for this video, use of great references. This is what I want to discuss here today. So without further ado, let's jump right in. This is a very famous illustration as well. It's the cover from the art book on the collector's edition of the game, as well as it inspired the statue, the hardcore player statue that Blizzard put together, and it's now in their campus. It will have the name of the first 1,000 players that reach level 100 on hardcore. I don't know who sculpted this. Potentially it's Brian Fay as well, as I discussed in the other video with Brahm and the collector figurine for Lilith that Blizzard put out as well. And it's quite similar as well to the altar of Lilith that you have to collect in the game. So if you've done that, you know what I'm talking about. But going back to this one, I think it's a class on illustration and choices. I love the connection, especially the connection of values. We discussed that a lot in my video on value tutorials. This reminds me a lot of Anthony Jones and his decision making on painting. Igor Sid, as we'll see in a bit in his process, he's more of a value and mass painter instead of line. He does use line to put together shapes in the right place, but then he goes straight into values and controlling those values. We can see a lot of that down here. And if we move back to the original image that we were seeing, you can see that a lot of values go closer to black and really connect with the rest of in the background. There's a bit of a lost edge here where you don't see her feet, you don't see the connection with the ground, and that's awesome to bring our eye up and focus on the area that has most information and is most important for what we're trying to convey. If we go back here, the use of colors and saturation, very low saturation in the skin here, but more saturation in these areas right here, as well as the lips and this gem over here. The use of greens and reds, complementary colors, as well as different textures. You have the soft tissue here from the dress, as well as very ornate use of metal and fabric over here. So this is really, really interesting, as well as the metal here from the armor. Very nice shapes and shape usage. I even like this one more than the final statue, to be honest, on the proportions, overall proportions. This is more straight. This one is more triangular. So we really can see the difference in there. There's a little bit of a difference in perspective, but a lot of that is design choice as well. In the final, you see the connection of values over here. So a lot of things that we'll see in some of his references in the end of the video, more towards the end of the video, but we can see that being used right here. This shadow shape, as I mentioned before, it's great. I'll talk about that in other videos as well, but defining the edge of the shadow and making that really dark. So the terminator of the shadow, if you've studied color and light book and contents like that, you definitely have heard of the terminator, is the edge between light and shadow, where you will have less. If you have a sphere, you have less reflected light in this area, so you'll have the darker area of the shadow. So that said, great usage here. I love the details in this one as well. So if we jump to his process, I found some of those images on YouTube videos and I took screenshots. I'll definitely have links to his YouTube channel as well as the specific videos. But he uses a very rough line work to find shapes and forms and proportions, then refines that and jumps straight into painting. And keeps refining and controlling values, textures, colors, and so on. You can see the same process done here. So more of a really rough line, understanding what this is going to look like, refining and finding all of the shapes, going straight into color and color masses, and then refining to the end image. It's really interesting to see the usage of more of a white light, even closer to a studio light. If we go back to Lilith, almost looks like a model that we would see in a magazine or a runway show. And this reminded me very much of Alexander McQueen's, specifically this show, Savage Beauty, that was turned into a book. I'll have a link in the description as well. This was presented to me by Anthony Jones during a workshop. Again, we talked about him in my video on values, and I'll definitely talk about him again in other videos here on the channel. He has a great control of values, shapes, and character design. So you see that great artists tend to have great reference. This is very, very good design. So definitely should check that out. So going back here, you can see the use of a similar lighting situation, very artificial light, but it gives this sense of almost like a model. Going to a more fully fleshed illustration, I think this is a 14-part video on his channel covering real time, all the process. So it's great to see the evolution and what's changed. I think it was a Christmas card. Igor illustrated for Warhammer 40,000 for a lot of time. So you see a lot of those shapes here, and you can see more of this kind of work in his portfolio. I have a link in the description. So going back to Lilith, once again, great use of design, great use of materials. And I definitely feel like some of that has to do with his relationship with Klimt, using him as a reference. And specifically this one, it's the avatar for his ArtStation page. But I definitely, looking deeper, I see a little bit of a connection on the necklace, the overall use of colors and simplification, as well as the grouping of values here in the hair, as well as in this head right here. You almost don't notice the head here until you look there. So this is by design. So the idea, controlling values, controlling colors, you will go this way. And this is an extra to the overall composition. It's very out of frame. And we can see a lot of the usage of values to drive the eye, as well as the use of texture to also drive the eye. You can connect here and go all the way here to the face. You can use this line and then bounce back here. All lines kind of bring you back together. Even if you're going out of the image, you will go back to the face. That is the most important part. You can go down here all the way to the face. You have a lot of arrows pointing to the face. Even the head is a big arrow. Down here, you can go here, and then you kind of go back. So everything is composition. As you can see on Klimt's, everything is composition. You will follow some of the lines. Some of them will lead straight to the other side of the composition, as well as some of them will lead you towards her face. That is really important. I've seen this exploration in other works by him. So if we look at these that he did, They have a lot to do with what we're discussing. Lost edges down here, going all the way to the face, a lot of different angles getting toward the face, the grouping of values on the hair, as well as the grouping of values down here in this big shape here. So you go all the way here, the use of textures and flat textures in the overall composition, not a lot of value in the dress, but leaving more value and form description in the areas of flesh. We can definitely see the same being done here. The flat clothes and dress and accessories and necklace and all, as well as in more value and form description in the head, as well as in here. This is a very famous painting of Adele Bloch-Bauer. There is a great movie about the restitution of this painting, Woman in Gold. And you can see the same here, even a very close connection with Judith that we've seen before. The dress very flat with a lot of texture, and the face more detailed and more rendered out. You can see a little bit of that in Lilith. If we do zoom in here, there is more of a flat approach to some of these materials, as well as the headpiece, and going all the way here. At least that's what I read from this. I haven't talked to Igor. I don't know if that's the way he went with those details, but I see a little bit of the flat here, and definitely see a lot of that in this experimentation. So you don't literally bring everything to what you're doing, but sometimes you do bring that even unconsciously to your final work. He also did a lot of compositions and famous compositions for Diablo 4. You probably, if you played or if you're into this kind of games, you've probably seen this. This was very big throughout the reveal of the game. So this is by him as well. And you can definitely see other compositions here, getting a darker mood, connection again, and grouping of values to give a lot of silhouette, control of colors, more greens versus reds, complementary colors, as well as some oranges and blues. So very interesting control of everything, contrast, details versus non-details. So very interesting to see. This one as well reminds me of a great reference. You've probably seen this if you played the game. This is the loading screen. You've probably seen this version, the 3D version. But this is the painting he did. You can open and close the door here. But it definitely reminds me a lot of Rodin's Gates of Hell. I love this piece. I had the pleasure and the privilege of seeing that in Paris at the Rodin Museum. It's really impressive. I think this one is not in the Rodin Museum. It's indoors. This one is outdoors. I believe this one is in the Philadelphia Museum of Art, but definitely reminds me a lot of how he figured out all the sculptures, textures, and the overall gate, even the division of the gates here. It reminds me a lot of this. So great references used by great artists once again. And finally, last but not least, this is another painting from his ArtStation. He even mentions that it's a tribute to Edwin Austin Abbey. And it's, once again, a great use of color, value, detail to give a very interesting composition. The blocking and grouping of the values and the use of black here, it's really amazing. The use of textures as well. And a lot of that comes from the reference he's using, this one from Edwin Austin Abbey. So it's amazing to see all the black in here. People don't use a lot of black in their illustrations. They tend, especially after Impressionism, to use a lot of colorful shadows and so on. There is a lot of red in here as well, but a very, very black. I love the use of lines here as composition tools as well. Simple areas versus detail. This is masterful composition. You can see some of the close-up textures back here. Even the figures are really well drawn, as well as they give a great composition. Sometimes they're suggested because they need to be back there. And the main figure has a little bit of that more artificial lighting, more white lighting over here. So it's interesting to see that influence. Maybe I'm seeing too much here. Let me know in the comments what you think. But on the other side, we definitely have a lot of black and red details. I love the use of textures here to change a bit, give more detail so that your eye will go this way. Also, if we go back to the main illustration, the use of contrast of dark and white, or lighter versus darker values, it's very important here as well to bring your eye this way. The textures in here are just awesome. And even the ground has a very good distribution of details versus breathing areas. So it's really important to see that, and we can definitely do some studies of that. Even in his work, Igor used some of that as well, using smaller details in some places and breathing room in others. I love the reference here in this cape to what we're seeing right here. So it's really great. To definitely should look at both and understand what he's taking out of this amazing reference. So that's it from me. I hope you learned something. And I think the main thing I want to say is don't be afraid of using great reference. A lot of great artists are using great reference and bringing that and transforming that into their work. And you should do the same. Try and combine different resources, different themes, getting a little bit of the value control from one artist, the shape control from other, as well as the color usage, and mix all of those together to your own style, to create your own style. And that will definitely help improve your overall work. I hope this was helpful. Have great studies. Have a great one. And I hope to see you again in other videos. Take care.